So you think you can beat me by outlawing my thoughts with your rogue politicians and the judges you bought? So you think you can mold me like I'm made out of clay? Oh, you want me to answer? Just got this to say. Take a look into this warrior's eyes. Tell me what you see. Take a look into this warrior's eyes. A heart that still beats free.
This is Paul Fromm, the Midnight Man. I'm on Stormfront Radio every night at midnight Eastern Time. I have a program called For Our People, and that's our people, the European founding settler people of the United States and Canada. I'm on every night. Catch me sometime. Paul Fromm, the Midnight Man at www.stormfront.org. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about this thing here, the cigarette. I suppose that I'm coming awfully close to violating some federal law or other. I'm actually not promoting this, and I'm promoting a brand. I'm not even promoting smoking. What I am promoting is your right to make your own decisions. You know, about 20 years ago, this new fanaticism struck the neo-Puritans in our society. First of all, the busybodies and meddlers managed to get smoking banned from all schools in Ontario. And at that point, I was a teacher in Ontario, and there used to be a smoking area in the schoolyard where students could go out and have a cigarette. There used to be a smoking area in the staff room. Well, then, smoking was banned from the school. What happened? Well, students and teachers on their breaks at noon hour were out there on the public sidewalk. Couldn't smoke on school property. Out there on the public sidewalk smoking. In the winter, grown men and women and students would be out there on the sidewalk, shivering and freezing, perhaps without their boots on, risking a cold to have a cigarette. As the years went on, the restrictions became more severe. After a while, you couldn't smoke in public buildings, and as one would drive by an office building, there you would see office workers, sometimes without their coats on, in the worst of weather, rain or snow, shivering, having a cigarette. And, you know, at one point, about 30-some% of the population smoked. And I was wondering to myself, if I were a would-be dictator, and I saw the way people allowed themselves to be bullied by government, by regulations, I began to wonder, you know, how much of a sense of their own rights and freedoms do these people have? If I were a would-be dictator and I could take away their right to smoke, push them out to freeze on the street to have their cigarette, I wonder what other rights I could take from them. You know, I'm not saying that the anti-smoking lobby wasn't sincere. I'm sure many of them were. But the fact that so many politicians were so eager to take away the rights of 30% of the population, to make them feel guilty. Meanwhile, of course, the politicians are only too happy to make about 90% of the cost of this packet of cigarettes taxes on one level or another. That's one of the reasons that from time to time cigarette smuggling has become a major industry in Canada and the United States. To me, it's a matter of freedom. Yes, of course, there are people who don't like smoking or who find it a sickening habit, who don't like the presence of cigarette smoke. And of course, there's got to be accommodation for them. But that's the point. There ought to be accommodation. In other words, a place for smokers and a place for people who don't want smoke. The accommodation that used to be there's a smoking area in a restaurant, a non-smoking area. There's still some blessed jurisdictions where that still occurs. I've just finished a speaking tour through the deep south of the United States, and there are some places where you still actually have an option. Would you like smoking, sir, or non-smoking? And I always say, it just doesn't matter. I don't care. Get me my food as fast as possible. Whichever area is free is okay with me. But I understand and I appreciate people who don't like cigarette smoking. And I have to tell you this. Although I've got a cigarette in my hand, I've never smoked. So I'm not making this case because I have a personal invested interest in it. My only interest is in freedom. Because I don't think that the nanny state should be telling grown men and women what they can or cannot do. That's their choice. And yes, there's a strong medical case that smoking is not good for your health. There is perhaps a less well-known case that suggests that some of those scientific arguments may not be as solid as they look. But regardless, that's up to an adult to decide. I will go with the mainstream science, or I will ignore it, or I will go with the perhaps dissident science. But that's up to us to decide. I'm sick and tired of some politician or some meddling social worker or some busybody deciding what I can or cannot do. If he doesn't want to smoke, that's his business. If I want to smoke or I choose not to smoke, that's my business. And I shouldn't have the choice made for me by some meddling, puritanical troublemaker. I don't need the state to decide whether I can smoke or not smoke. We have to rediscover that thirst for freedom, that prickly, rugged independence. There was a time that the soldiers of the Dominion of Canada were the terror of the Western Front in the First World War. Why? Because many of them came from rugged farm backgrounds. And they were the young boys from the farms, the mines, the lumber camps across this great Dominion. And these people had a really developed sense of individual freedom. They valued their freedoms, and they were prepared to fight for them. Now, whether or not that war was a just one's another matter. But Canadians had a reputation of really cherishing their freedoms. So did Americans. But there's something in the feminization, the WIMPification of so much of the propaganda and the garbage out of the so-called entertainment pouring out of Hollywood like a sludgy sewer. That men are being feminized. That the whole society is all about touchy-feely, sensitivity, people's feelings, people's sensitivities. People should have the right to offend and be offended. I should have the right to smoke if I choose, and I don't choose. And somebody else should have the right to be offended if they like by my choice, either way. But we don't need the government telling us what to do, and we all have to develop a more prickly sense of our own freedoms. Don't tread on me. I've told some of my smoking friends, why didn't you people, when the city council passed one of its restrictive ordinances, why didn't you go in there and have a smoke-in at the next council meeting? Oh, you can't. It's against the regulations. Too bad. Go and have a smoke-in. Well, they'll arrest us. Fine. Let them arrest 100 of you, and you'll be back to the next council meeting with 200 people for a smoke-in, and the next council meeting with 300 people. Believe me, the wimpy politicians would have broken, and there'd be no anti-smoking ordinances. What we need is citizens' rebellion. Stand up for freedom. If you're interested in freedom, why don't you catch me every night, midnight, Eastern Time, for our people. www.stormfront.org. I'm Paul Fromm.